Welcome to the Thomas Coffee Metal Podcast, episode 41.
Welcome everyone to the Thomas Coffee Metal Podcast. I'm your host, DON CARDENAS. I hope everyone's doing great this week. I am doing. This is, I think, the 4th episode of this weekly experiment, and I think I'm keeping things on the rails, if you could ever say they were on the rails to begin with. But yeah, I think we're managing okay. I don't think this is a super sustainable schedule for me, but we'll see. We'll see. I have some changes to my life schedule coming up soon, so maybe weekly will be a thing for a little bit longer than I expect. We'll see. On that topic, recently on Twitter, I put up a poll. I was wondering what people thought about ads in podcasts, and I've never, I have one ad that I do, and I did it for the service that I do for the podcast, and I'm only even doing that for just because it's free, and I figure might as well. They're doing all the work for me. Might as well just do a little thing for that. There's not really much of a payout, if any at all, for that. But I've been just kind of thinking about ads and stuff like that, and not that I'm necessarily being approached by anybody or any particular company, but before I even start broaching that subject with anybody, just kind of thought what everyone else did. Because for me, podcast ads can be kind of annoying, especially when there's a ton of them. But I also understand, hey, that's their job. Ads are important, I used to feel the same way about YouTube ads when I watched YouTube videos, but I'm like, no, this is how they make their money, so just let the ad play, it's fine. I mean, unless it's like a 5-minute ad on a 5-minute video, and it's like, no, I'm not going to watch this. But yeah, so I don't know, I'm going to think about that a little bit more. You might be seeing the Anchor service ad pop up on more recent episodes and things like that. Just to see, I mean, let's be honest here, it's not going to be any real money, and I think the service doesn't pay out until there's like a $15 threshold reached, and I am nowhere near that. And even if I was able to get a steady payout of $15, however often, 99% of that is it's a 99% chance, I should say, that that's going to go right to funding other comic Kickstarters or paying for some more Patreons or something like that, just dispersing it back out into the community. So maybe it might offset buying some music or something like that. I don't know. I'm not overly concerned about it, but it was just something that was on my mind and I was kind of thinking about. So I don't know. We'll see. If you have any thoughts on that and you didn't catch the poll, or you're listening and you want to sponsor an episode or anything like that, let's talk. Let's figure something out. Let's see how we can help each other. All right, on to the recommendations. The comic recommendation this week is DEGA, a 44-page self-published graphic novella. I don't know what the threshold is for that. I'll just say graphic novel. By DAN MCDAID, and the format is really cool. It's a little bit oversized. It's a hardcover. The pages are kind of thin. They don't feel cheap or anything like that, but they feel kind of thin. I don't know if this is like a European style for the book, or if that's just how Dan decided he wanted to print it. But it's 44 pages, color, black and white, with an additional 22 pages of processed back matter material, which is, I totally dig. And I really enjoyed this book. I've known Dan on Twitter for quite a while, and I'm very familiar with his work. He's, drawn, Judge Dredd. He's done a ton of work for other companies. He's just a really talented guy. And I'm kind of surprised. I think this is his first full-on, all him, no other writers attached. Just he's all 100% pure uncut MCDAID. And it's really good. I enjoyed it. It really feels like something that would have been at home, like in serialized in like heavy metal, or if this was like made into one of those made in the movie Heavy Metal, this was animated, I totally would fit in. it fit in perfectly. It's a sci-fi mystery action book. The story revolves around a young female astronaut slash space explorer trying to get away from a planet that's, if she stays any longer, it's going to kill her in a very interesting way. Not to give that part of the story up, because I thought that was a really cool device that Dan came up with. And there's a lot of, let's say, interesting life forms and environmental hazards that make getting off the planet a bit more trouble than it already was. I'm just used to seeing Dan as an artist, and seeing his writing was very interesting because it shares the organic nature of his ink work, and it's almost like anti-exposition, and I mean that as a positive. Given the nature of the story, I think it's just absolutely wonderful. He went that route. It creates like an almost visceral experience as you're going through these trials that the main character is going through, and the experiences that she has. And yeah, it's a really cool way Dan brings everything together. And as much as I like the story, the art is what makes DEGA more than worth the wait I did, because I ordered the deluxe edition that had a sketch that came with it, so there's a little bit of a wait to that. But even if it didn't have the sketch, it is more than worth the wait, the extra shipping cost from overseas, and not that this was overtly expensive or anything like that. It's a very fair price. But yeah, the art is just phenomenal. Dan's ink work on this book it's a bit looser than usual, but it's also very expressive. It's not to say it's not detailed or seems rushed, which is a hot term to use for comic book art, because when is it not rushed? Anyway, that's a whole other tangent we can get into. But the way he renders everything and the style he kind of imparts on this book, it feels immediate. And as I said before, it really adds to the tension and just the overall confusion that you're feeling with the plot. It feels like, with his lines, it feels at times that his ink is like gasping for, his brushes is gasping for more ink, and at the same time it's also so oversaturated that you can just like feel the weight and the paper kind of buckle under the line work. Dan even goes for like the extra trippy bonus points by doing something really cool with the colors, where it's full color and it starts to drop out, and then it comes back with some spot colors here and there. And again, he creates a very, I keep thinking of this term, and I used it already, visceral. It's a very, you're in this book when you're reading it. It's really, really well done. I'm really glad Dan finished it and got it out. It was only 44 pages. Only 44 pages, right? Like, that's easy to do. But it felt longer, and it also went by way too quick. So I definitely had to sit down with this one a couple times just to kind of take it all in and fully appreciate the art. And the back matter Dan included with all the extra sketches and weird notes and stuff. I absolutely love that stuff. As Dan wrote himself, like, if you're one of the weirdos who likes this stuff, himself included, yeah, it's a treasure trove. DEGA is a phenomenal book, and you can pick it up right now by going to danmcdaid.bigcartel.com. There's a digital version, a deluxe edition that comes with a sketch. You may have to wait a little bit longer to get that one, and then the regular edition. And I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. But yeah, DEGA, Dan McDaid, phenomenal book, worth every single penny and more. As for the music recommendation this week, I am going with the band MAINLINE and their self-titled EP, which came out early 2020. MAINLINE is a young metal band. None of these guys are over 21, as I'm told, and they're out of New York State. And I actually came across them researching the mixing engineer work of my guest for next week, and checking out their stuff just to see his handiwork. I was really pleasantly surprised by the songs these guys wrote and just how much I enjoyed it. They really capture that early Metallica, Judas Priest, big hooks, killer riffs, shreddy, but nice melodic guitar solos. They nail all that whole feel, and it also feels very modern. They kind of like also incorporate a bit of like modern hard rockish stylings to that to really great effect. They really, I think they really have a bright future ahead of them if they can keep up this kind of quality. Of the 5 tracks on the EP, the opener, no surprise, Hide in the Shadows, is definitely one of my favorites, and the follow-up, Open Fire, is also a very close, if not equal, favorite. It's followed by 2 other tracks they're very solid, mind you, and they sound great. And the EP ends on a pretty high note with the track Last Rites, which, no shit being spewed here, no hyperbole, it could be on Ride the Lightning. Like, that's this way, even the solo and just the tones and the songwriting, and it's not to say it's like a rip-off Metallica song, but it definitely feels like that's where this song would be just welcomed in. But I'm going to be the basic metal B that I am and pick the first track. Hide in the Shadows is my favorite track to show you. So let's get a taste of that. Yeah, Mainline. A link to their Bandcamp in the notes. They're available on all the other streaming services, Apple, Spotify, all that. But, I always recommend everyone go to Bandcamp and support them that way. Even if it's not Bandcamp Friday, artists get a ton of the revenue from sales. Much more than streaming, much more than anything else, to be honest. So, yeah. Mainline EP, opener track, my favorite, Hide in the Shadows. Okay, on to my guest for this week. We have the amazing Kate Sherron. Kate is a phenomenal artist. She is a delight to talk to, and I am so glad that, I was able to come across her work, probably, a bit earlier than I would have through this podcast, because she's working on a phenomenal book with, friend and former guest Brian Lovell, called Chained to the Grave. And it is a just awesome, supernatural, trippy Western full of weird and crazy stuff and just amazing imagery. And Kate just elevates the book every issue. It's just an amazing book to read. We talk about a ton of stuff. Kate brings up a bunch of her favorite podcasts, a bunch of manga stuff, and working for licensed books, and just a ton of really cool topics. Kate, as she's self-described, a talker, but she's got a lot of great things to say, so it makes her kind of the perfect podcast guest. Again, I had a great time talking to her, so let's get right to it. Kate Sherron. So I was pretty unaware of your work until I spoke to my good friend Brian Lovell over a year ago, and he was really excited about this book he was working on with another buddy, Andy, and he had nothing but amazing things to say about the artist. And he showed me a preview, and I was equally floored. And I have a lot of questions about the book, about how you came to work on the book, how you met Brian and Andy, and just the differences, let's say, of your previous work and this work. But Kate Sherron.
Oh, it's pronounced Sherron, but thank you.
Oh, I am so sorry. I guess I have Gary Sherron on my brain.
Oh, it's all right. It looks like it should be anything but Sherron, but it is.
See, now normally a podcast would cut out this flub, but I'm not, because I am lazy. So Kate Sherron, I should have asked you beforehand anyway. My apologies.
Oh, I'm so mad I'm quitting the podcast right now.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening. I still gotta get my show out. So this is the show for the week, guys. Have a good one.
No, it's no big at all. No big at all. At least you didn't call me Katie Sherron. Then I might have walked, but.
Oh, okay. Making my notes. Okay, thank you. Kate Sherron, Comics, Coffee, Metal. What are you digging right now?
let's see. Right now, see, comics wise, I've been doing a revisit of Fruits Basket because for my anime fans in the know, they know that they revisited the series for and are doing this new version of the anime, which is gorgeous and wonderful and very true to the manga. And that was something that I absolutely adored back in the day. And so I thought it would be nice. We're in the third season of the anime. They're going to actually finish it all up, which is very exciting. And so I thought that would be nice to revisit. And of course, I'm also just kind of digging through Taiyo Matsumoto again because brilliant. And if y'all haven't read Sunny, please drop everything and go read Sunny. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ping Pong, Tekken Kinkri, Cats of the Louvre, they're all fantastic, but Sunny just floors me in ways that I can't even begin to speak. Let's see, your music. I'm not as much of a music person, but I am very much a podcast person. So, gosh, I could even, so I've been listening a lot to Story Break, and which is a Max Fun series, and which we're rounding the corner on the Max Fun drive. So any of my fellow fans of the network, please make sure you go and donate. Sorry, I'm not a shill for Max Fun. I'm just a big fan. And I very much believe in supporting the creators that you love. And so but yeah, so Story Break is just, I love that show. It's buck wild. It's fantastic. It's entertaining while also like really, really great for anyone who likes writing. And then like added bonus, like the three guys on that show also do a hilarious live play D&D podcast called Dungeons and Daddies, which is also giving me life right now. Dungeons and Daddies asterisk, not a BDSM podcast. I
have a feeling a few listeners will be disappointed.
Yes, I mean, like they do technically have a bonus BDSM episode, but it's just it's very good. If you like, for fans of like the Adventure Zone, where you like a nice balance between comedy and the feels that will completely wreck you out of nowhere. Dungeons and Daddies will do that to you, where it's all yuck, 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 and then all of a sudden, like, you are just absolutely slammed by way too much emotion, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this, besides just keep listening. Which is 100% up my alley. Oh gosh, and what was the coffee?
Yeah, coffee.
Yeah, so I'm not quite an old geezer, but I'm old enough that when I hit 30, my body's like, nah, I think we're going to just do heartburn when you drink coffee, so I'm more of a tea person.
I can respect that.
And so I've been doing I've needed a lot of kick in the pants. So it's mostly just been like Irish breakfast blend or anything like heavily smoked, like a black tea that's been like real smoked. So it's like you're just kind of drinking a really dark, rich campfire. That's been a lot of my jams of late. So
I was definitely a tea drinker before coffee. I didn't start drinking coffee till like my mid-20s ish.
I was like a pot a day drinker, which is probably why my body at 30 was like, we're done.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit before the show, but with kids, I'm definitely, my wife and I are definitely, sharing an overflowing pot every day of coffee, and I'm gonna have to cool it soon too, because I'm no spring chicken, and the heartburn from the coffee, as much as I love it, it's coming back. It's like okay,
I can occasionally fake it if I like douse it in like milk, or I can occasionally make do with like an espresso tonic. That's something that I discovered. Actually, I'm sure it's floating around everywhere. I just had never heard of it until we had kind of a weird quarter, and I was in a building that I wasn't like normally in last quarter, and there was a coffee shop right by it that they're like, oh yeah, espresso tonics, and also we also do like rose, jasmine, lavender, like all those like frou like floral flavors that you can add, which I'm a sucker for weird flavors, and that includes anything botanical. And so I was like, rose espresso tonic, let's do this. And I can treat myself to that occasionally, but just a small and just one a week.
Yeah, I can't do with the floral or the overly sweet kind of stuff, or not necessarily overly sweet, but like coffee with like sweet notes, or tea with like herbal tea.
Oh
with
yeah,
sweet notes.
no, I don't add any sweet, but like the occasional flavor I don't mind. But I just like weird. But yeah, no, sugar does not belong in coffee or tea. The occasional milk maybe but sugar no. No. Although honey's good when your throat is killing you. I will give that. Honey and tea and when you have a sore throat. Okay, yeah, that's the one asterisk.
I break all the rules set forth by I don't put nearly as much sugar as I used to. I used to put a ton of sugar in, but yeah, I've scaled that way back. And with tea, I'm less likely to put anything in there. Sometimes I'll put honey in, if again, if it's a dry day or something in the winter or something, and it's at night,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've tried black, like just like straight black coffee, or just with half and half, a little bit of half and half, or milk or whatever. And for me, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. It's
my
wife is able to. She's tougher than me though. So.
I think it goes back to when I was a kiddo, and like my dad at some point made a passing comment about drinking it black, and that's the only way to do it. And like my dad is the sweetest puppy, and actually like doesn't give two craps about like whether or not you quote unquote are doing it right or whatever. And so I don't know why that stuck in my brain. And so but when I was young, I was like, okay, I'm going to train myself to drink black coffee so that I can make my pops proud. And not that that didn't matter. Of course I just made him proud by existing. And so but I trained myself up to drink black coffee, and now I'm like, well, that's just how you drink it. Maybe you'll drop a couple of espresso shots in there to make it even blacker. But of course, and then my body was like, ha ha, that's you get.
Perhaps if I had started younger with it, or I don't know, I always put a ton of, I was always putting a ton of sugar in my tea, and then so naturally when I started drinking coffee, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna literally just move over the methods of preparation just to the coffee. And it didn't help that the first coffee I started drinking was like Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh.
And if you ask for cream and sugar at Dunkin' Donuts, you could either get a respectable amount of sugar and creamer, or you could get like half a bag of sugar.
Yeah.
and all half cream. It's it's a crapshoot. So yeah, I think where I started is kind of like set me on my path. But again, no spring chicken, so I got to cool it with the sugar.
Yeah. Man, it sucks getting old when it comes to the food stuff. Everything else I'm fine with. It's just the food stuff that's driving me bonkers.
It really does. I used to, I love spicy stuff. I love hot sauce and all that. And I don't know, the past few years now, it's like, it's not that I can't take it. It's just like the after effects of heartburn and just,
just like not worth it. Like,
it's just like, oh, why are you doing this to me, man? Like, I don't drink, I don't smoke. This is my one thing. Like, let me enjoy the heat.
Enjoy this vice, please. Yeah, because honestly, like, it's for the best. I don't drink nearly as much as I used to anymore, which is very, very good. But also, like, wine, hard liquor, anything but beer will just like heartburn city, wreck my shop. I feel terrible. I can do like one or two beers and like, actually, you know what? All right, body, that was good. I'm actually kind of glad that you're shutting me down on this one. But
Now, you mentioned before that you teach, and I'm always curious when someone's teaching but also working in the comics industry. was, I'm not fully up on the timeline of your professional career. So did you teach
before life?
Did you start teaching before you started getting regular comic work, or was it kind of hand in hand?
Actually, the teaching came after I was well established as a published creator.
Okay.
And came because largely in part of that, as far as I can tell. Gosh, I won't get into like the full long story of my career, but it's because it's not exciting. But in about 5 years' time, so roughly like 2015 to 2020, I ended up like getting into the published side of comics. Like I've been doing like self-publishing, here and there before, web stuff and things like that. But like, kind of broke through with license work, and put out, 20, 25 books or something ridiculous like that in 5 years' time. And and a little bit of Amazing World of Gumball, a little bit of Invader Zim, a little My Little Ponies, a Rugrats thing, a Labyrinth thing, one Adventure Time thing. And so I was just kind of basically like just trying to kind of set down some roots in the industry, and I'm lucky enough that my style is flexible and that I'm able to kind of be a chameleon. Because I mean, I really loved the getting to draw the fun, silly, cartoony stuff, but that's not my end goal as far as career's goal. But the way in presented itself, and I am nothing if not a hard worker and someone who's just like, all right, man, if this is my opportunity, I'm gonna take it. And so I've Trojan horsed my way into the to the industry. Everyone's like, I guess I'm sure a lot of people still think that like I'm just like a kid's artist, stuff like that. Oh, little do they know. Little do they know. And so like for whatever reason, I had been keeping up my LinkedIn because I don't know why. God damn, like no one in this industry keeps up a LinkedIn except I guess me. And I had all my publication history on it, plus the fact that like many, many, many moons ago, I had graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design with my MFA in illustration. That was like '07. This was way back. And so they had been headhunting for a new sequential art. Sorry. We call it sequa because good God, sequential art is a mouthful. And so they were kind of headhunting around for a new professor. And, I had a lot of, I'm assuming they liked me because I had a lot of published titles to my name, and I have my master's, and I went to SCAD, and all that jazz. And I know they were looking for another woman to kind of add to the mix, and so they reached out to me. And I love teaching. Like I've done teaching in the past, and it was really kind of funny because I had worked a convention maybe a month or so before, and I was actually invited guest to that convention, and they're like, "Hey, would you mind like running a few panels for us?" Because it was a smaller one, and so I was like, "Okay, sure." And I remember like was chatting with one of my good friends afterwards. Man, doing those panels was really great. I miss being in the classroom. This was really nice. I hope I get to do more panels so I can get back to that kind of like teacher sort of esque place. And then seriously, like not even a month after, SCAD's like, "Hey, do you want to come teach for us?" Like
the universe was listening.
And I always would have liked to have taught at SCAD, but like I don't know, the stars never aligned until apparently they did. And so they knocked on my door, and I decided to go ahead and apply, even though I was worried because I was like, oh man, my career's kind of going in a different direction, and like just joined the studio and da da da. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm gonna say yes to this adventure. I said yes to every adventure that comes across my plate. Why not? Let's try this. And so fall of 2019, I joined the Sequel department as a full-time professor of sequential art, but I keep up my freelance while I do that, and it's been an adventure with COVID just kind of,
I'm sure.
just sweeping in and making that first year quite interesting. And I was welcomed to Savannah with a hurricane scare too. So like, man, my first year was definitely a treat, but I'm still here. We're all
It should be
still
smooth
here.
sailing from here, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I teach college and I make comics, and I have kind of one of the best lives I could ever ask for, you know?
It sounds like a lot of fun. I don't think, like, in my head, I feel like teaching is really fun, and like it can be really fun, even though it's an amazing amount of work.
Yeah.
But I also know that I am probably a terrible teacher. Just given how I've had to, anytime I've tried to teach anybody anything, I'm just like, you know what? I can write you down some amazing instructions. I can make you a great document with screenshots and how to do things. But to teach you how to do something like just me teaching you, it's going to be a freaking disaster. So yeah, that's not going to work out. So you mentioned some of the license work you're doing. It's some cartoon properties and stuff like that, and your style, you are a chameleon because you nail the looks and the I guess the character models and stuff like that for all these you would think you're not wildly different, but they are. Invader Zim looks nothing like Lion Little Pony.
It was
Labyrinth looks
wild. There was some overlap there where there was one month where I was drawing 3 books.
wow.
And it was definitely like, it was an Invader Zim, it was a My Little Pony, and I might have also been doing Rugrats, the Rugrats Hanukkah special at the same time, which that is, I mean, I do not recommend anyone drawing 3 books in a month, period, but I also don't recommend you drawing 3 very different properties.
I feel very sorry for your brain during that month, just trying to differentiate from those mindsets. It's crazy.
It was a trip. Never again. Never again.
Is it? And not that I'm looking for any type of ragging on companies, but is it difficult working for a licensed IP like that? Are they like ultra strict on a lot of the looks and appearances, or is it just kind of, can you do it like this, and you show them and they're like, all right, go ahead and do it? Like,
it depends on the licenser. And I'm not going to name names out of school about who were very, very picky and who were very, very chill. I've had the blessed luck of running the whole gambit of folks that were like, whatever, as long as we can tell it's our characters, great. And others were like, well, let us just, okay, no, okay, we're going to give you examples, like actual exact samples. And like, it's, you run the whole gambit. And, but most of the time, as long as I just, as soon as, like, I just needed to kind of, the first book I always know with a licensor is going to be a crapshoot because I'm trying to unlock the code of that particular licensor. And then once I can unlock that code and figure out what you're wanting, then I can give it to you. But usually there's a little bit of like a kind of feeling you out, because that was the downside, was that not a lot of those jobs I was given much direction going into it beyond, as to what was wanted. But you get notes on the back end, and you respond, and you fix it, and you move forward, and you remember that for the next book.
And while it's technically licensed work, I was speaking to somebody at a show once who did a lot of work that involved likenesses. And they said if they didn't pay me as well as they do, which from what I've heard from that kind of work, doesn't exactly pay that great. But I guess for him, it was they made it worth his while. He's like every page and he didn't name the particular likeness, but he said there was someone who, no matter how well he drew it, he's like I've literally traced their photos just to see what would happen, and they still come back with notes about it. So
thank God I never had to do anything with like real people. Although I did do a test for Star Wars, which I think would have been fun for like, the IDW licensed Star Wars adventures, and didn't get the gig, which was okay. Like, because I realized later, I was like, I can draw these people, but man, those spaceships won't be hard. And Star Wars fans?
Oh yeah, they're gonna.
I thought pony fans or something. Star Wars fans are a different breed entirely. So I think I kind of probably dodged it. A blaster beam there.
That was definitely for the best. Yeah.
I mean, I do love the Star Wars properties very much, but the first three, and by first three, I mean I'm old enough that the
original trilogy, yeah,
the OG trilogy,
yeah.
But
well, Star Wars has a lot of, especially some of those IDW books. From what I've seen, they have some varying styles. So
yeah,
it's like it's less like drawing the characters in a fun way. It's just someone's gonna be like, well, technically that droid doesn't look like, like, oh, they got this X-wing wrong. There's supposed to be this decal on this other wing over here, and there's things I can be that nitpicky about with my own fandoms and all that, but it's just like, oh God, who wants to bother with that? Like, as cool as it would be to draw a Star Wars thing, or in my case, like a Star Trek thing or something, like, I don't want to deal with the nitpickers on that.
I am the least pedantic person you'll probably meet, just because I was the second child of my immediate family, like the baby of my family, and the baby of all of my cousins, and it was all a bunch of like know-it-all smart jackasses who I love with every bit of my heart. But being the one at the very bottom of the pile, like anytime you said something slightly wrong or did something slightly wrong, oh, they were all there to correct you. And so I'm just like, you know what? Like, so I'm not the pedant. I am not the stickler for, like keeping everything correct and in line. And like, so like, man, I just, about the only thing I will actually actively like correct people on is A, my name, and B, the word zine. It's not Zine. It's what the hell is Zine short for? It's short for magazine. Zine. Zine. That's the one I will definitely I will fight you over.
Who says Zine? That's so odd.
All of my students, because they're young and they've never seen a magazine in their life.
Well, you can forgive their ignorance a little
Everyone
bit,
who's listening,
yeah.
I love you guys, but you guys do all say Zine and you know it. And you're wrong, and I love you. But
it does make some sense, but magazines do exist. They still exist. They're not as prevalent as before, but
no,
Zine.
I'm teasing. Honestly, I think it just is because what zines have become for these newer generations are just something very different and very online. And I think about it a lot. I have a pretty broad vocabulary from reading, but there's a lot of words that I for years have mispronounced because I only ever read them on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm assuming that it's just kind of one of those sort of situations where people see the word and they don't ever hear it in conversation. And then all of a sudden they have a teacher who came up through the alt scene and the zine scene and the 90s comic, indie stuff and Riot Girl and all that jazz. And this is one thing where I will put my foot down on.
that's the line in the sand.
Oh, that's it. That's my thing.
You mentioned just, saying things wrong just because you've only seen them printed and not heard. It just reminded me of a story of I had no idea that you would how you spell hors d'oeuvres.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So in my head, whenever I read it, it was hors d'oeuvre or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, and it was from a Wolverine comic, or actually technically a Sabretooth comic, but it was just like, I remember reading that. I'm like, Like that just sounds so
you were.
weird. What is that? And it wasn't like years later I saw it like written and pronounced, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel so stupid.
Oh, we all have those.
Yeah.
And hey, in your defense, it's French.
Yeah.
And if you didn't take any French lessons, like how are you gonna know? How are you gonna know that that H is just gonna get swallowed right up?
So I occasionally ask Twitter for questions with guests, and we have a couple for you. So I'm gonna ask them throughout the show. And for our first one, it comes from at the Prophet Len. He wants to know, what is your favorite comic of all time?
Oof, that's a tough one. I mean, anytime you have to do faves. So let me see. Is it cool if I do like a top 5?
Yeah, you can. I know Len, and Len, that you had to ask that question, didn't you, buddy? Yeah, top 5. Like, I wouldn't be able to name a favorite. Well, maybe, but yeah,
I mean,
definitely
like,
top
if
5.
I had to pick like an absolute pinnacle favorite, like, but the problem is that like sometimes like the absolute pinnacle favorite is because it's like that's what I read last, But so I mean, gosh, this is going to be like such a cop out. The entire body of work by Taiyo Matsumoto would definitely be on that list. Although if I have to narrow it down to one, I would narrow it down to Sunny, as I was talking about earlier. And of course, Fruits Basket has to also be on that list. But I would also want to throw on there, gosh, I feel like such a weeb because I'm also like Blade of the Immortal, but I'm like thinking back to some of like the really influential stuff, Blade is just so good and so beautiful. And let me think about Western or American stuff.
It's interesting here you bring up a lot of manga and anime stuff, because that is very much a blind spot for me. It's not something I'm never been interested in. It's just like I don't know where to start, and like some of these are like, you're like, One Piece is amazing, and you look and it's like all these volumes. I'm like, I don't have
the only reason
time
like
to start that.
No, if you ever want to get into One Piece, like the trick is get the Shonen Jump app subscription, because it's like $1.99 or something a month, and you can read up to like 100 some odd chapters a month free, and a lot of their big long running series like One Piece are free, and so
awesome.
Yeah, so actually, like I mean, as far as even if if you ever want to just kind of like dip into at least seeing what Shonen's all about. Shonen being comics that are generally aimed for young boys, but they just seem to be popular over here. So people have a tendency to kind of have this sort of tunnel vision for shonen, and that gets translated and brought over a whole lot, even though it's a much broader world. Which is why, like, I always like to bring up Taiyo Matsumoto, because his stuff is hard to define. Stylistically, thematically, it's just, and it's gorgeous and weird, and it's so good. Oh my god! Like, at the very least, if y'all haven't read it, at least read Tech on Concrete. Tech on Concrete will definitely wreck your shop in all the right ways. But and that's kind of one that gets held up a lot. And the anime movie that they made of that is beautiful too. So it's like it really kind of supports that. But like, as far as like Western comics, I really, really enjoyed, and this was, and I'm not a Cape and Cal person really. Like, I like superheroes. There's so much, and I really didn't really read superheroes until post of like the Avengers movie.
Oh, okay.
My progression was like, I kind of, in the 90s, I came into manga and like a lot of like the indie alt scene. And then in my 20s, I started reading Western comics more, but not, Cape and Cowl. And then in my 30s, I saw Avengers, and around that time, like the Matt Fraction run was going, and people were talking about a few of those like sort of easier to get into storylines that you didn't have to read hundreds of issues to get into. And so, I mean, like, I was like, all right, let's do this. And I mean, obviously, like, so like the Matt Fraction run I really liked, but like, oh my god, the very short-lived Charles Soule She-Hulk. Oh man, it's superheroes, and it's courtroom dramedy all in one. Like that's, Jennifer going toe to toe with Matt Murdock to defend Steve Rogers in a wrongful death suit from the 30s. Like, who doesn't want that? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that series was very well regarded, and I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up, and also just all the other stuff you brought up, because a benefit for me for doing this podcast is I get to hear about things I don't know about. And as much as I think I know about the comics, what kind of comics are coming out, what kind of music's coming out, or podcasts or things like that, every single time someone's like, oh no, this is what I love. And I'm like, I've never heard of that before, or I've only have a passing, like I've read that somewhere, that name somewhere. I have no idea what you're talking about though. So yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I'm trying to broaden my horizons with the short amount of time I do have to read comics and all that. And as much as I've loved Cape and Cowl stuff when I was growing up, it's not that I've matured and gotten older. It's just like, yeah, I've kind of read that. They're not necessarily for me anymore. I'm not. That's a different argument whether superhero comics are for millennials or they should be shooting for Gen Z now, or what age bracket they should be going for. But
it's
for me,
interesting to, it's just, and there's such a shift in the readership, what they want. And gosh, this is a conversation. This is an argument I always have with my older comics friends, but I'm like, I swear to God, this is based entirely on me being surrounded day in and day out by, late teen, early 20 something comics people. No one wants to read monthly books. They want long form.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I'm not a monthly book person. That's not how I grew up. That's not what I got into growing up. Like, I think it's annoying to have to read only 20 pages of a story and pay $5 for it and wait a month. And like, as a writer, that's infuriating. Like, it's just infuriating to have to like just get into a story and then have to wait a whole month or 2 months or 3 months, depending upon the series, until you get the next hunk. And it's just a terrible way to tell a story to me personally, who likes long form. I'm not saying this as like a written in stone, this is the only way to go, because different stories definitely benefit from being serial and so on and so forth. I just know what I like to read, and what I like to write, and how I like to think about story. And I like a beginning, middle, and end. I like to be able to follow the arc. I don't like having taken out of the action, thrust back in. Especially as someone who likes to write suspense and horror, nothing kills the suspense and horror like saying, all right, let's put a pause on this for 30 days. And then let's try to get you back into it. That's rough. And like, and these younger generations don't have the money to drop on monthly books the way they do, and don't have the patience for it. And like, if you can only get monthly books at comic shops, whereas you can get graphic novels literally anywhere, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's a shift in the industry that we'll have to reckon with. And I know some people are reckoning with it, and then some people are just fighting it. And I'm just like, it is what it is. That's a whole nother story for another day. Well, that's a conversation to really go down.
My favorite comic shop ever, Challengers Comics in Chicago. They have a podcast and they talk about the business, and just kind of the ins and outs of running a comic shop every week, and sometimes larger industry stuff. But, they've kind of said more often than not that if monthly comics ended next month, they'd be happy just to sell graphic novels. Like that would make their lives so much easier just to sell graphic novels to everybody.
I mean, after this past year's distro mess.
Oh yeah.
oh boy, howdy! I'm definitely not even going to jump on my diamond soapbox. So it ain't worth it. This is a happy podcast. We ain't gonna go down that particular road.
No way, no how. So She-Hulk. So yeah, again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember that run being talked about very fondly. And
so unfortunately they had to wrap it up real fast, but it is 2 trade paperback volumes, and I mean, it isn't quite satisfactorily wrapped, but it is enjoyable as heck, and I recommend it.
Awesome.
And the art's also deliciously offbeat. And I cannot apologize enough. I believe Ron Wembley did a few issues, but the main artist, and I'm blanking on their name, but it was one of the artists who had to help step in on a few of the issues of the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run. And God, anytime you get out of house style, I'm a happy camper. But it worked really nicely. Like, it's a quirkier style that fit the story perfectly. And I am a sucker for when you can, it's clearly like, it's evident that the folks engineering the story realize that the style of the art is an essential storytelling tool. And when the style jives with the story, it's just magic when that actually comes together beautifully like that.
So the artist you're referring to is Javier Pulido?
Yes.
And he is amazing. He really is. So being reminded of that, I'm like, oh wow, yeah. I totally agree with your comments about, you know, getting away from like the house style. Not that, you know, it's a knock against the artists who do that, but when you have those deviations, it makes the book feel different. It makes it feel almost more important, I think, because it's like we're focused on telling you the story. We're not trying to all jive together as one big mass of IP rolling along.
Yeah, you know, this is not just another episode in the soap opera. You know, like this is something different.
Yeah.
You know, and I love that when that happens. Like, and there is nothing wrong with a good soap opera. I mean, you know, I was definitely a CW teen, or it was a WB when I was a teen. Let's be honest. But I loved all that trash. You know, and a good soap opera is highly enjoyable. But like, you know, it's nice to when you see these characters that you normally get in that sort of, you know, weekly or monthly sort of soap opera grind, like they step out and you can kind of tell larger stories, deeper stories, more intimate stories with these characters that everybody knows already. And like the world is established, the characters are established, and then the sandbox gets a little bit smaller in a way, but it makes that more intimate. And I just think that's really interesting when that happens.
That is a much more eloquent way of putting it. Not important. It makes it feel more intimate, and you have a greater attachment to that. Yeah. So, you know, speaking of like breaking from house styles, and kind of that, you are now working on, or have worked on, a book called Chained to the Grave with, you know, our mutual buds, Brian Lovell and Andy Eschenbach.
What?
And Andy, if you're listening, I'm desperately remiss in like not having you on yet, because I know you'd be an awesome guest.
Andy on. He's such a sweetheart.
I need to get you on. He's such a fantastic writer, and he's given me plenty of his books he's been doing. I think it was I'm gonna screw up the name. I think it's The Devil Wants to Wear My Red Shoes or something like that.
Yes, his Red Shoe books are really, really good. And like honestly, like this is a guy who's been grinding and really deserves attention. And you know, I really hope that folks can turn an eye to Chained to the Grave, and see just what I mean. Like obviously, like not to say that like Brian and I didn't obviously have a hand in the book, but like Andy really brought a lot of life to that page, and he deserves to be elevated and celebrated, and more people need to hire Andy to write their stuff for sure.
100%. So how did you end up hooking up with Brian and Andy for the book? Did they approach you, or you just kind of knew each other?
So Brian is actually one of my dearest, closest friends, which I know seems a little bit odd because I am I draw these kid comics, and if anyone follows my social media, I'm like clearly someone who likes to paint a good face on and to do, you know, get my hair did up and wear fancy clothes. And Brian is like the most sweetest, kindest, salt of the earth guy covered in tattoos. Although I do have tattoos as well, but most of them are done by Brian. But like Brian and I had met, gosh, I want to say it was like summer of 2016, because At the time, one of our mutual friends, Ryan Ferrier, had brought me on as artist for another pitch for another project that I'm actually in the process of coloring right now, but has not been announced, so I can't say much about that. Besides, it's going to be a good one. More horror, woo!
It's fun to draw. I mean, horror is fun to draw. Like that's why you see a lot of artists like it just excel on these types of. It's just fun creating atmosphere and doing. And sometimes if drawing like monsters or dead things and goopy weird stuff, like it's just fun.
And it's something, it's a medium a genre that I really gravitate towards because I write as well. I'm not just an artist, and I'm actually in the process of pitching around a few things because that's kind of like I was saying, like I kind of Trojan horse my way in, like by doing all this kid stuff. And so once I like made my connections and made my name and felt comfortable enough, now I'm bringing out my big weird guns and doing all of the things that I want to be doing creator owned wise.
That's smart.
Surprise, suckers. No, not suckers. But it just kind of, I'm lucky enough that just happened to work out that way. And plus, I'm also very blessed to have a day job that financially supports me so that I can then pursue the creator-owned stories that I want to pursue. But yeah, so back in August 2016, Ryan introduced me to Brian. I know.
Well, I know Ryan too, and he's an awesome, amazing writer as well. And
yeah, and so because they were co-writing this thing that I'm drawing now, and actually, it's like that's a whole when that starts to come out, I could tell the story of the long story about that particular book. But it is finally almost coming to a close, so I can't get too salty about it. But it general publishing stories, the woes of the industry. But so Ryan introduces me to Brian, and I still remember the first night we hopped on the horn to just kind of talk about the series. And we ended up talking for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours or something ridiculous. And like, that was just kind of, and that's all she wrote. And Brian and I have just become really, really good friends over the years. And we're the chat on the phone while grinding on our late shift, keeping each other company while we're working in the wee hours. And he's just an absolute delight. And so, I don't think I met Andy through Brian. I think I met Andy just walking around at a C2E2 many years ago. And so, I'm trying to remember how
Andy was at a few C2E2s. I think
that was it. And then later realized that Andy and Brian knew each other and were both, Cincy tattoo boys. And then, when this series came up, they were just kind of playing around and asked me if I was interested. And I said, sure, like, let's give it a whirl. And was lucky enough to reach out to, because at the time I was still doing a lot of my license work, and my editor on Ponies was Megan Brown, who is one of our editors for Chained. And I reached out to Megan and was just like, hey, guys, do you think IDW would want anything like this? It's kind of odd. And she was just like hot to trot for it. And Megan is just an absolute doll, like one of the best editors I've worked with. I love her. Elizabeth, also wonderful. So it worked out. It all just kind of fell together really nicely. Now, if only COVID hadn't dropped in and kind of made a little bit of trouble in the distro, and then we've had some shipping problems these last few months. Womp womp. But the beginning parts of the story was just a dream, and it all came together really nicely. And it's a book that we're all very proud of, and excited that it's finally getting out into the world, albeit a year later than we had originally planned. So, womp womp.
Yeah, it really is an amazing book, and I was looking forward to its release ever since Brian told me about it. He was just so excited about it, and when I finally got to read the book, I was just like amazed about how like just fast it just felt like a book that I'm a big fan of the Six Gun series.
Yes,
And
yes.
that supernatural western thing, it's something that has my interest definitely as a creator myself, of like that's a genre like I would love to play in. And just after reading the first issue, like you like nailed so much like awesome imagery. And like I think about there's a particular scene in the first issue where there's a woman with a bullet hole in her head, and she's kind of hovering over the main character, and there's like this blood like spewing out. Like
that one, you don't always get excited about your own stuff, but I was like, I nailed that one.
Yeah, I think about that. It's just such like an awesome image, and I'm just like you guys just like went and just, like grabbed that vibe that the Six Gun gave me just right out the gate. And knowing Brian and knowing Andy, it's just gonna get like insane, just even crazier. Like even in the second issue, there's a scene with a gentleman, and he's got two pet crocodiles. It's this full splash, and it's just this amazing, this like awesome. It's like it's less like I guess symbolic imagery, but it's also just like this awesome vibe setting image, which is just like, man, this book is just as crazy as Andy and Brian can get, and I know they can get. You're just amplifying that with what you're putting out there, and it's really awesome.
Well, thank you. Honest to God, like the boys, like because I was coming off of doing a lot of license work, and I warned Brian. I was like, this is a weird story. I'm gonna get weird with this because I need to stretch some muscles. Like it's been a hot minute since I'd done anything like properly in my own style, and honestly, like this is the first professionally published thing that I've ever done in my own style. I've done web comics, but this is like the proper first thing. And I was like, I'm gonna be stretching some muscles. I just think I'm gonna get a little loopy with this one, and like color. Because originally it's funny because you look at the pitch and the color like the color was still pretty bright, but it was much more subdued. And I remembered when I was coloring the pitch pages that I was just like, oh, this is a slog. And then when it came time to actually do the book, I was thinking back to that. I was like, oh, I don't want to do 5 books of hating my life while coloring it. And so I was like, boys, this is a weird supernatural horror Western. We're not using Western palettes. And they're like, all right. So proof right there that they're the best collaborators a girl could ever have. No.
Yeah. Well, going to Brian and Andy saying, let's get a little offbeat here, and them not instantly agreeing would be completely out of character for them, I'm sure.
No, and they're like as I said, like Brian and I are very close, and Andy and I are also good friends, and it's so wonderful to work on a book with people you love, because in addition to like just obviously that, like then like there's that trust there,
yes,
where like I trusted them to write a banger of a story, and they trusted me to nail the art, and that was just never a point in question, and it makes for really for me, it made for a really, really good work environment. Like I said, especially since this was my first creator-owned book that was going to be put out by, a proper publisher, and I couldn't have asked for a better project and a better group of collaborators, for real.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I was going to bring up that the amount of trust that seems to be within this creative team is immense, and I think that really just elevates everything to another level, because Brian being an artist himself, I'm sure he's like, well, Kate's the artist, she that's what she wants to do, then let's do it.
It it was definitely nerve-wracking because I feel like in a lot of ways, um, and this is not to dog my own talent, but like Brian, his layout skills are unreal. The way he lays out a page, and like there's certain things that he just draws that are just like blow my mind. And he obviously has a much different approach to how he renders the world than I do. And so like it's it is I'm always in awe of what he does. And so like when I first was like, are you sure? Like, and this was obviously for not this project, but the one before that, that came before, but is being finished after this graphic novel with him and Ryan. Like I was like, you sure you want another artist drawing this? Because like I know how I can sometimes feel about wanting to just draw the things that I write. Although as I've matured as a creator, there are definitely some stories that I'd be able to hand off, but some stories I can't. Like I have to be the visual voice for that, and so I was very concerned about that. And Brian was like, your work's solid. I trust you, and gosh, that means that really meant the absolute world to me, and really helped put me on this path that I'm on. Was that very very early because like Brian and I met very very early in my comics career, and having someone like that in your corner is huge. It's really huge.
Completely. I've known Brian. God, I don't even know when I met him. It was definitely maybe 7, 8 years ago, I want to say. And just the level of just sheer like ability
Right.
that he just like it was a couple years ago. He's like made a turning point where he was always good, which is like, oh, you're gonna be one of those guys. Like you're gonna be like one of these guys we talk about that that people are gonna keep talking about. Like, oh, have you seen Brian's new thing? Like, and so whenever he is like complimentary towards something, it does feel like it has this like crazy amount of weight to it. Also because Brian's such an honest and sweet person, and truly one of like the best people I've ever met.
Yeah, he likes to pretend that he's the bad boy of comics, but he's like the sweetest boy in comics.
He's the pit bull that looks tough and mean on the outside, but he's just gonna curl up next to you on the couch and watch your stories with you.
No, I am. He's the sweetest. His family is just absolutely wonderful, and same with Andy, and it's just like when you can find good people to work with, like you hold on to that, and they're not just good people to work with; they're good people to live with.
Yeah, definitely. So we have another Twitter question.
Yeah.
And that is from @part-time comics. And that is, what is your favorite Nick cartoon?
Oh gosh. I would probably have to say like and even after working on the comic, this hasn't tempered my love for it. Like the OG Invader Zim. I watched that religiously in college. And so but I also God bless. The the first Avatar series is very, very good. But I also have a soft spot for Danny Phantom because he's a phantom.
Is there a licensed book that, would draw you back to doing something for license? Is there a property that you'd be like, you know what? I think I have to do do this book.
Oh. I always had in my back pocket a like standalone, non-canonical mini-series that would be Bruce Banner centric.
Okay.
Not Hulk centric, although he obviously is there, but is very much more about Bruce Banner. That I would maybe do, but no one would ever want. So that will never happen. Uh, but that's, I mean, like, I say that because, like, it's basically like everyone else has a terrible year, and Bruce is like, for once, gets a break for one whole year, while everyone else like has to suffer. And so, but so yeah, no, that's like never even gonna ever begin to happen. But if I had, my gosh, I don't know, I mean, like, not that this is a comics property, but I would always love to play around in like the Thomas Harris world. I've been a long time fan of like Hannibal and Will Graham and Clarice Starling. I could go for days talking about either the books or the OG movie or the brilliant TV series that needs a fourth season right now. Um, and I would always love to do like a Sherlock Holmes story, just because I have been a big fan of Sherlock Holmes since I was a kid. And so, grew up reading the short stories and have watched every single movie or TV series that I've been able to get my hands on, including a lot of the weird BBC stuff. Although the weird, I mean, like, not the, obviously not the current BBC stuff. I mean, like, there's like, stuff in the 80s. And oh God, there was this really terrible made for TV movie where like the guy from the Doctor Who spin-off TV series was like Watson, and there was dinosaurs, and it was so bad, but you bet your ass I watched it because I love Sherlock, and I love me some Watson and Holmes. Like, they're my boys. So that I wouldn't mind doing, but those aren't exactly, quote unquote licensed properties. But yeah.
Well, based on the work I've seen from, Chain to the Grave, any one of those books you just mentioned, I would be 100% down for. Like, you mentioned the Silence of the Lambs, the Hannibal type stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of that stuff. Not that I'm like dislike it. It's just I just, it's not in my.
Oh, you can totally not like it if you don't want to, man.
No,
like,
it's just no. I like Silence of the Lambs. That was a good.
Your flavor.
Silence of the Lambs, I like that movie. I just haven't watched the show or anything like that. Even though I've heard people just rave about the show constantly. But just imagining your style playing in that arena, or like a Sherlock Holmes, or like the Bruce Banner, like that. I think there's definitely more people than you would think that would be like, yes, that would be great. Like, just Bruce having a good year, like that just sounds like who's done that? No one. I don't think anyone's done that yet. Like, give the guy a break.
I have a really great title for it too, but I'm not going to share it here because someone's going to take it because it's perfect.
Hold on to it. Make Marvel come and pay for it. Just make Marvel come and pay for it.
I was going to say, like, it could easily be like, I mean, like, it makes sense, like, and it would just be like a quote unquote year. So you can even make it just a 4-issue miniseries, or even a 6-issue miniseries. It doesn't even have to be a full year of 12 issues. Like, it's just a year where he has a good year. Everyone else has a shitty year. He gets to like save everyone's ass, and I mean, there's more to it. Like, it's a nice cycle, and it walks through and deals with shit, because I can't ever leave anything be. I'm a very thematic writer, very tonal writer. I don't ever just. I struggle at just telling a plot, a story. There's always got to be something beneath it. Not that I'm very good at conveying those themes, but they always have to be there no matter what I'm writing. So Well,
no, I like stories that have themes and more going on than just moving from A to B to C to D to E. It just progressing that way. Not that there aren't enjoyable stories that way, but for me, I find I like stories that have those underlying themes and all that. So Marvel, if you're listening, and you're not, but if you are, jump on
Hit
this.
Me up for the non-canonical Bruce Banner miniseries.
Hey, you can't go wrong, right?
You'll love it, I swear. No one will love it except for me. It would be so self-indulgent, but it would be so fun, and I wouldn't have to draw it. I would just write it. They could get someone else to draw it. It would be fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Kate, it's been amazing talking to you. I've had a blast today. As promised, I'm keeping it brief for you. I'm keeping it close to an hour.
I appreciate it. As you can tell, I could talk for hours. It just is a late evening after a long week after a long quarter.
And once again, I greatly appreciate you taking your time to talk. If you could let everybody know where they can find you on social media, and if there's anything you want to plug coming up, including more Chained to the Grave, please do so now.
Y'all are lucky. I am easy to find out in the world. My handle at both Instagram and Twitter is just my name. So KATESHERRON, one word. So at Kate Sherron at Insta, at Kate Sherron on Twitter. My website is katesherron.com. If you need to email me, it's katesherron@gmail.com. Like I got in early. I got it all. I got it good.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Nice and simple, clean. There you go.
Yep. And so you can follow me up there, and we have next Wednesday is the next issue of Chained to the Grave should drop. I apologize to everyone. There's been some shipping issues with these past couple of issues, so I know it's been a little sporadic on the release. And so we really, really appreciate everyone who's been coming out and showing their love and showing their support and keeping up with us. Like, trust and believe. Like as I was saying earlier, I don't usually toot my own horn for my art, but like I really, really feel like I hit the pocket color-wise with issues 3 and 4, and 4 is probably one of my favorite things I've ever drawn, and the covers get weirder, so you really want those. So I appreciate y'all for keeping up with us, and really do stick with us. We've got a wild ride ahead for you, and keep your eyes peeled to the social medias. I don't know when I'll be able to announce this graphic novel I'm working on, but I'm sure it'll be soon enough. Within the year, and that's also going to be buck wild, and especially good news for the Brian Lovell fans out there and the Ryan Ferrier fans. And be good to yourselves. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, to all my students, also, can I do one more shout out?
Go.
Yes. To all my graduating seniors this year, you guys are absolutely amazing, and you have blown me away time and time again. I'm so incredibly proud of you all. And I cannot wait to see you all in the industry at my side. You guys are fantastic. I love you guys. Congratulations. And looking forward to seeing you all graduate in a couple of weeks. Yay!
Awesome. Kate, once again, thanks for coming on. I had a great time talking to you. Hopefully, once, you definitely have a new reader for whatever you're putting out with me. I'm looking forward to seeing how Chained wraps up. I'm looking forward to what you, Brian, and Ryan are all cooking up. And yeah, it's a good year for me being a reader. That's for sure. And so, everyone else, you should definitely jump on all this stuff. It's just great stuff,
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
All right. Thanks again.